Hey there, and welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show, where we talk about anything and everything that has to do with building cohesive, vision-driven teams. I am Casey Watts, school impact strategist and the host of this show. Now, if you are here, then you inevitably are an instructional leader who wants to make change happen, even when change seems impossible. And you can do that if you have cohesive, vision-driven teams that have done clarity work. They know exactly where they're headed and how they're going to get there. These teams have done identity work, and they've built their self and social awareness skills. And they have done collaboration work, and they know how to move beyond faux collaboration to get to true collaboration where change happens and where people get on board. I'm so excited to bring to you conversations that help you to do exactly that. The work that needs to be done to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 94. I'm going live tonight with Sherry St. Clair. She is going to be sharing all about her newest book, Intentional Instructional Moves. And I cannot wait for this conversation. And I cannot wait actually to get my hands on the book as well. Sherry, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we start the show tonight, Sherry, tell our audience a little bit about who you are, your aspirations, and what kind of work you do.
Sure. So Sherry St. Clair, I'm president of Reflective Learning. I have been a classroom teacher, high school administrator, worked for the State Department and state of Kentucky for middle and high school consultants. And then in that role, my national and international work just grew. So I left the school system and started my own company at that time. And I have had the honor of working with some of the best and some struggling schools all across the country and beyond. And so that is my work in a nutshell, or my background in a nutshell. But all of my work is around instructional leadership and just looking at how effective instruction through coaching helps in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell our audience, just so that they're aware and they can go look it up on Amazon. And I'm also going to include this in the show notes, but you have a book prior to this one as well.
Yes. Yeah. So this is my second book on my own. I have been contributing author to several books, but I authored Coaching Redefined, and Coaching Redefined is written for instructional leaders, whether that be an administrator or a coach in a school. And it just is set up to help them think about themselves as an instructional leader, and then look at their school system and the needs of their school system, and then talks about those coaching cycles. And then it talks about the whole growth and other things that schools might need to consider when they're thinking about the culture that's impacting coaching inside the school. So that was book one. And then this one, Intentional Instructional Moves, is my second one. And I'm really excited that it released in October. And as you know, it spent some time on Amazon's hottest new releases. So I was super proud of that. It has been a labor of love and intensive work for the last couple of years, but I'm really proud of the quality of work and excited to release it to the world.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Congratulations. I am proud I'm proud to know you, and proud that you have produced this great work that I know I've leaned into your previous book before, and I know I'm going to lean into this book as well. And what I find when I work with schools is that I'm so sorry, you're going to hear my dogs in the background a little bit. We're just going to move past it because that's where we are in life, right? Okay. But I have found that we're really trying to tackle best practices at the tier 1 level, but it's really kind of cumbersome, right? Like it's easy to say this is what we want to practice, or this is what we want to tackle, but actually making that happen is a different story. So I would love for you to tell our audience a little bit about how this book came to fruition and what made you decide this has to be written.
Yeah. So a couple things. One, a lot of my days are spent coaching inside of schools. I mean, I have the privilege of being in hundreds and hundreds of classrooms a year, walking beside teachers and instructional coaches and principals as they're trying to better their practice. And the thing that I hear over and over and over and over is we just don't have time. Our time, it's our biggest enemy. And, we're not going to get more time. The time is what we have. And so then we have to think about how do we use that time in the best way possible? And that's where that intentionality comes into play. And if we're going to use that time in the best way possible, then we need the best strategies based on research. Not just based on, how we were taught when we were growing up or what we like to do, but based on the science of learning, what really impacts student learning. And schools were asking me questions about that. Administrators wanting to have like this playbook of what teachers could do to help students learn more efficiently. And I stepped back and I after several schools actually paid me to consult with them to pull that together, I was like, this is too massive for a school to do. They don't have time to do that, but I could do it. In my current role, I could do it. I know I could have never done this as an administrator. I could have never done this as a teacher. They just do not have the time. But in my role, it was something that I felt like I could do it. I could serve in this way. And so I just started on the journey of, okay, if we're going to break down these concepts, what is the most important pieces of it? And then how can we really intentionally try to implement these in schools in a way that's going to help students learn best?
Yeah.
And that's just where this work grew from. It truly is my hope that this is something that will serve schools well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you talked a little bit about like teacher time is always, I hear it everywhere I go, no matter what district, no matter what grade level, no matter what position people are in, we don't have time. And so we always go back to that. But what do we have time for? What are we making time for? And are the things that we're making time for actually having a massive impact, or the impact that we want to see? But you talked a little bit about how it can feel overwhelming, like even thinking about as a teacher, hearing we want to see best practice in your classroom, we want to see these instructional moves. It's easier said than done. And I just wonder if you could speak a little bit more to what causes the overwhelm for teachers. Like, what is it when it comes to implementing instructional moves? What is it that creates the overwhelm?
Well, I think that depends on the teacher. And so, I know you're doing consulting in schools as well and working with schools on this, but so there's some teachers who are coming into the teaching profession from the business world. They haven't gone the traditional route of learning the teaching pedagogy necessarily, or the teacher prep program. And then there are teachers who have been in school all their lives, quite frankly, and they went to school to be a teacher. And the part that might be overwhelming to them sometimes is knowing that relevancy piece of how it applies to the business world and how they fit into that, the students that we're creating for that. So I think that overwhelming piece is different for different people. Just, it's we're all very unique in what we know. But where I think we sometimes get overwhelmed is we try to do a one size fits all professional learning in schools. And, just like a teacher differentiates for their students, we as instructional leaders have to differentiate for our teachers. And what one teacher needs is very different than what another teacher needs. And so if I'm sitting in a professional learning with things that I already know, I feel like it's a waste of my time and I get overwhelmed with that piece. Or if I'm sitting in a professional learning and what I'm learning is so far beyond what I can feel like I can implement in my classroom well, then I'm going to get overwhelmed. And again, that's where this book, I hope, will help. It is taking these concepts and then breaking them down into these intentional steps that don't necessarily need to take place in order, but it is, if you're wanting to get to more effective group work, then here are some steps that you might be able to take and the strategies that go with them. Now you think about what fits you in your classroom, what would work for you, and filter through those. So that's how I hope it'll work, is that it's really more tailored to the needs of those individual teachers.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on this book. I'm so excited. Okay, so there's so much research out there about instructional strategies that are effective. How did you decide which ones to include in the book?
Okay, so first of all, this book is heavily researched. This is one that, my work is on the road a lot of the times. And a lot of times after I'm finished presenting or working in a school, I'm racing back to the hotel room and then I'm doing, several hours of research for this. I think I ended up with like 25 pages of research that I had cited for this book. And when I look back on it, I'm like, how did I do that? But when we think about the strategies that I put in here, so they went through 3 different filters and partially a 4th one. So I'm looking at the World Economic Forum research. And the reason I love that research is the World Economic Forum goes out and interviews Fortune 500 companies and says, what are the skills that students need to be successful in the business world? And it's not for just students who are going to college, but it's for careers. We know that some students will need to go to college for their career, some will not, but we know that all students will need careers. So what career skills will they need? So the strategies that I've included in here help with some of those career skills of problem solving, ideation, active learning. Those are things that the business world are asking us for right now. Creative thinking, the technology use. So those are woven into the strategies. It had to help students develop skills in that. Social emotional learning, that is so key to students being engaged and taking ownership of their own learning. So the strategies that I use also bring in those social emotional learning skills and help those become developed. And then the third thing is the science of learning. And I'm looking at things that have a high impact on students retaining content knowledge. So I rely heavily on John Hattie's work and Marzano's work for that, because I think it's some of the top in the field. And I filtered through and found the best of those and things that they agreed on and that in their research, and pulled those into these strategies. So those are the 3 main things: the career skills, the SEL skills, and the science of learning part. And then another part that you're going to find heavily in these are reading strategies, or literacy strategies, I should say, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, because we know that in our country, we have a literacy epidemic, that we need more students being able to read well. And so if I can show you how to weave all that together, I feel like it's going to have an even greater impact on the learning of students.
Yeah. Whew. That's amazing. It reminds me, so last week I was in Los Angeles doing some work with a school. They're going through the clarity cycle framework. And one of the things that they're trying to get clarity around are how are we going to promote student engagement, and what are the instructional strategies that we want to lean into for that to make that happen. And when I left one of the groups, I think it was the middle school group, one of my final phrases was, I just want you to think about what kind of student you are creating, or how you're developing the student, not for just this school year, but how are you developing them for the workforce 5, 10, 15 years from now, knowing that it's even going to be different than what it is now. And which is so hard, I think, for us. Like, we want to do that. I know teachers want that, but they also are limited by, obviously, their time, is what you've talked about. And they're also kind of bound by, yes, but I also need my students to do well on this assessment at the end of the year. So, there are so many constraints that I feel like go against trying to make that possible. But if we could just all get on board with implementing these instructional strategies and making a commitment to it, we would see so many significant gains.
I
So many.
agree. I agree. And I also think that somewhere along the way, I don't want to say that we have forgotten, but that sometimes we lose track of the fact that assessment data is one marker.
Yes.
One. And it's a big one. And, I will share many times that I felt like I received my first job because nobody else wanted it. And I was a teaching assistant and then a teacher in a grade that was heavily tested in our state at the time. And teachers really didn't want to stay in that grade so long because of the pressure of those assessments. So I have been there. I know what that feels like. And you never forget that feeling of when, your whole school's assessment scores are on your grade level shoulders. That's hard. It is hard, but we have to keep in mind that that is one data point. And I think one of the stories that I share in my book is one of an administrator that I have been coaching for a while, and she met me at the door of the school, and she said, "Sherry, come here, you have got to see my data room." I mean, she was so excited. And I don't know about you, but data rooms are necessary, but exciting is not really, goes with my thought of a data room. But I was like, okay, so let's go see it. And she just walks me into a room that's just covered with data on every wall. And she says, "I want you to look at this. This is the first time in 7 years that all my data is headed in the right direction. My behavioral data is down. My student attendance is up. My parent involvement is up. My assessment data is up." And, it was just a powerful moment because I'm thinking, this is how you're doing the right thing. It's not, let's run to reading and improve our reading scores and then watch our math go down, or watch our discipline go up because students are bored to death and now they're acting up in class. It is, how do we create that culture of instructional improvement very intentionally to address these issues as a whole, looking at the whole child so that we can make those improvements.
Yeah, very, very well said. Okay. You talk about in the book helping teachers move from like theory of this to actual practice. Walk us through an example of how that process might work.
Yeah. So this book is divided up into several chapters, and I'll put my glasses on here so I can read. But so I have chapters on classroom management, engagement, rigor, relevance, standard-based lesson, direct instruction, scaffolding and differentiation, assessment for learning and learning of learning and for learning, student presentations, group work, growth mindset, student discourse, goal setting, and differentiation. So it covers a lot. And here's why. When I started to think about what makes a really good, effective classroom, I just started putting charts around. Jim Knight taught me this, and how to write a book is just put a chart, and that becomes a chapter, and another chart becomes another chapter. And then I started thinking about, okay, what do teachers need to know? When we're working with schools, sometimes they will want to do these book studies, and they'll want to, we need to work on differentiation, so we need to find a book study, and it takes us all year to read the book, and then we've lost what we did last year and then we need to read another book on rigor. And so what I've tried to do is give the nuggets of, what does rigor mean? Or what does student discourse mean? Why is it important? Because according to research, why is that important? How does it fit in with those world economic and social emotional skills? How does it help develop that? And then give the intentional steps and to bring that in the classroom. That's where you get to your practical part. Then I hope that the teacher can take those intentional steps and reflect and say, okay, here's the intentional step I would like to try. And then they go to the companion guide. And so with this book, I have really written 2 books. There's the hard copy book, but then there's also the complimentary virtual companion guide, so that a teacher can go, okay, I'm going to pick intentional step 2, and then they go online, find that. It has the strategies for that, and then all the handouts that go with that. So this book includes over 50 handouts that teachers can take and use straight in the classroom.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so I'm just out of pure curiosity. As I'm writing my own book, I'm like, do I favor one chapter over another? Do you favor a chapter in your book? Is there one, or like maybe one of the strategies that you wrote about that you're like, yeah, this is gold?
Well, I think it depends on the teacher. And, if what I don't want this book to become is for a principal to say, here, Sherry, go implement chapter 18. That's what I don't want. This book is written for teachers, to teachers. And so I hope that a teacher can really think, okay, this is an area that I feel like would help benefit my students.
Yeah.
And so I know that doesn't answer your question, but that is my real hope, that, if a teacher feels like, I've tried group work, but I just can't get it right, something's missing, then go to the group work chapter. Or student presentations, the kids just do not pay attention while others are presenting. How can I fix that? That's my hope, is that they will take it and use it as that kind of resource. But with that said, I am partial to engagement, and I'm thrilled to hear you say that you're working with your school in engagement, because I see a lot of misunderstanding around engagement, and schools going about it all the wrong way. So that one would be one that I feel like that, was a good starting point.
Yeah. We had a whole conversation about, the difference, what we've come, or I guess, even in our experiences, what we've come to believe that engagement is. And sometimes the idea is that engagement means fun activities or a fun classroom. And it's just not that. We want students to be cognitively engaged. We want to be cognitively engaged, right? Like that's how I'm going to experience fulfillment at work. That's what we want to create for our students. So you talked about this companion guide. So it sounds like, really and truly, if you have the companion guide, and let's say leaders have taken their teams through some professional learning, they've really talked about instructional strategies to implement that are going to have the highest impact, and their teachers are setting goals, they really can use that companion guide to walk them step by step. And actually, your book cover has stair steps in it, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that, that illustration.
So the stair steps are just so we can think about continuing to grow, continuing to get better. And it's not going to be perfect as you try things. It's not going to be perfect. I hope that no one hears me say, this is the answer to all teaching problems. But it is for us to keep thinking about moving forward and moving up and helping our students move up as well. And one step at a time, not all of it. So that's why I wanted to break it down. My years and years of coaching is what I feel like has led me to a point where I can write a book like this, because teachers have helped me to reflect on, when my principal comes in and says, I need more student discourse, what does he mean by that? And how do I get there? And so it's for me to be a teacher of the teacher of the teacher being coach, I really have to think about what are those small steps this teacher can take to do that and do it well. Because if you ask a teacher to take too large of a step, it's not going to be successful, and then they're going to get discouraged. So it is just thinking about that next step for that teacher, no matter where they are. So if they're on step 1, you take them step 2, step 3, instead of saying, let's jump from step 1 to step 14.
Right. Absolutely. I would imagine too that this book provides the common language that leaders and teachers need in order to help teachers to grow and take those steps.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you go back to engagement, and I'm sure if you haven't seen this yet with your work, you're going to see it, that we just say we need to improve engagement. And then my next question, well, are we talking behavioral, emotional, or cognitive? The one that they want to go to first is behavioral. But really, if you look at the research, it's the emotional engagement that ties our brains in and gets us to want to do the behavioral piece and then the cognitive piece. So, I hope it does provide some clarity for schools and help them think about really being more intentional with their steps and clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So now that we're talking a little bit about instructional leaders, do you have advice for instructional leaders who might want to support their teachers in implementing these instructional moves?
Well, one is try not to do all this at one time. That would be advice. Please just don't hand it to a teacher and say, implement all this. Like I said, this one I've written for teachers, the audience of teachers. The questions are direct, for teachers to reflect on. But the administrators, if they're using this, I hope they will use it as a book study, but like just a chapter for us to break down that chapter and then to think about what's worked well, I would say, is for us to go through a chapter, but then to think about what intentional step that teacher is ready to try, and for them to pull up that intentional step. And in the intentional step, there's several strategies that you could use for that step, because it's not you need to do this. It's here's something you might try. And so for administrators, leaders, to give teachers that opportunity to think which one of these would work for you, try it, and then come back and let's talk about it, or let me see it in the classroom, or let's pair up and try it together, just knowing that there's going to be some growth there.
Yeah. Can't you just imagine and picture people in their professional learning communities pulling out this book and really talking about the instruction that's happening?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That would be beautiful.
Yes. I think we have to build those strong instructional conversations and relationships in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. What kind of long-term changes? I'm sorry, you were about to say something?
Well, it actually fits in with this question, but what I was going to say is I hope that in time that this book, if schools would implement this, that it does help with that tier 1 piece. And that would be a long-term one. Something else that I'm hearing way too often in my schools is we have a tier 1 issue. So we have a large percentage of our students sitting there needing stronger tier 1 instruction. And when we have to spin our wheels at that tier 1 spot, that takes more time. And then we're even farther behind, and then we're even more stressed, right?
Yes.
So if we can use some of these strategies more effectively, strategies that help students retain content better, then I think long term, we're going to have less students in Tier 1. That would be my ultimate hope.
Yes,
And,
ma'am.
and in turn, then that allows a teacher more time to go on and move on with other instruction.
Yes. And provides joy in teaching.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yes. So again, there's several literacy strategies in here with reading or writing, speaking or listening. And I mean, when you hear that authentic voice of students, it just makes teaching more interesting, and it makes learning more interesting for the students as well.
Yes, 100%. Okay, we are going to start to come to a close in this conversation, Sherry, but I want you to share with listeners, number one, what you would hope their biggest takeaway is from this conversation, and then also share a little bit about where they can find you and find the book.
Okay. So I'll start with where you can find me in the book. I have my website is reflecttolearn.com. You can find me there. I have a monthly newsletter that goes out. You can sign up for that if you would like to. I will be honest, it was on pause while I did this writing. It was just all the sitting in front of the computer I could do was with this. But I have started that back, so they can sign up for that if they would like for updates. My email is there, but it's sherry@reflecttolearn.com. I'm on Facebook and X and Instagram right now. I'm looking at Blue Sky. I'm interested in Blue Sky.
We got to talk about that later.
We'll talk about that later. And then the takeaway is, I want teachers to be at peace with where they are in their journey and understand that we're all still learning. You and I as coaches are learning, teachers are also learning. And just to think about, as we model for our students what growth mindset really means and how it is that we are active learners, what is one thing that they would like to improve on, and just dive into that one piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. This has been the best conversation. I can't wait. I know I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again. I can't wait to get my hands on the book. And I'm excited to learn too, like what intentional steps you're taking teachers through in the book to help them grow as teachers, grow in their profession, and really enjoy the craft of teaching. And in turn, guess what? We're supporting students in the best way possible. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I have a feeling people are probably going to really need to sign up for your newsletter so they can get updates about the book and ways that you can support them in their schools using this book. So guys, be sure to check out the show notes. There are going to be links there to Sherry's website, her email, as well as a link to her book. So be sure to check those show notes. Sherry, this has been fantastic. Do you have any final words?
Thank you. No, I would just say if your listeners become readers and if they try some of these things and have any questions about it, please reach out. I would love to connect with them. I have people sending me little text of things from their classrooms that they're trying, or words in the book that are encouraging to them. So I do hope they'll stay in touch. And if they struggle through any of it, that, let's problem solve it together and we'll find something that works for them.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for joining me tonight, Sherry. This has been great.
Thank you. Great to catch up with you.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hey there. Thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends and those leaders who are eager to build cohesive, vision-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with KC on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.